We're talking about how to talk to your kids in the wake of tragedy that you may see on television as well as online, or kids may hear at school, especially in the wake of the recent Colorado shootings. Joining us this morning for our weekly Moms on the Go segment, we have Molly Pearson, we have Lisa Harst, and Allie Dar. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, when a tragedy is all over the news, for example, the most recent one from Colorado, it's hard to ignore that, especially with your children. But how do you actually approach that sensitive topic when they have questions? Let's start off with you, Molly.
Well, I think the most important thing is, one, understanding their age and maturity level, and then not brushing off any questions that they have, and more validating their feelings. So making sure that you are answering the questions appropriately, not telling them it's just going to be okay, you know, and really letting them understand death, and that sometimes bad things do happen to good people. Okay, so you're saying your approach is to talk to your children. I've always been curious to know, should children actually be listening to a lot of the shows? Obviously, we're a news show, but you know, when it's being replayed over and over again on cable news, should they even be in the room watching that, Lisa?
I had that, actually, a friend of mine had her son, they were watching the news that morning, and she had no idea what had even happened yet, and they were all sitting down as a family watching it. And you know, she's like, it was kind of one of those awkward times, because then what do? He's sitting right there, you know, so you kind of have to talk about it. And it's just important, I think, to use like age-appropriate language. You know, when you have really young kids, there's not really a line between real life and fantasy yet. You know, so they get confused sometimes as to what really happens, as to what they see. So it's important to make them feel safe, I think, and to understand that, you know, bad things do happen, but, you know, mom and your teachers, everyone tries to make you as safe as you can, things like that.
And Allie, this is something we can all relate to with our kids, because we're talking about the movies. This wasn't a tragedy that happened where kids are unfamiliar with the territory. Kids go to the movies. Yes. And so how do you bring up the conversation of letting them know that they don't have to associate something that happened that was so evil with going to the movies? You don't want them to be fearful.
Yes,
so
you don't want them to be fearful. So you just keep in mind that some people do bad things, and it's not everybody's bad, and we just need them to be kind and compassionate with others, and just go about your daily life and just live it.
Okay, let's talk about the age groups for children, especially when we're talking about appropriate behavior. Everyone parents different. So Molly, in your household, what's age appropriate, and when is a good time to start discussing these things?
Well, we actually encountered this about a year ago when there were really bad tornadoes in Mississippi, and we had an extended family member pass away. And so at the time, my daughter was 3, and she had overheard us discussing it. And you know, that's the thing about kids, they can even be in the other room, but they're always listening. So for us, you know, we had to address it and we had to explain it to her. But what was surprising for us is that, you know, within a couple of days, at first it didn't really sink in, but then all of a sudden 5 days later she would start asking questions. And you know, then she would actually start playing games where she was pretending to play dead. And as a parent, you know, with your first child, you almost want to stop and shelter them. But after reading some articles and trying to understand it a little bit better, you know, most experts would say to let them play it out, because they don't really understand the difference between fantasy and death, and might not understand that death is real. You know, they don't understand that the body stops working.
Right, they can't really relate it. They hear the words, and that's something I want to bring up with you, Lisa, is parents have to lead by example. So when there is a tragic incident on television and the parent acts frantically, it's more than likely the child is going to look at that person, their parent's behavior, and pick up on that. So how should parents really be the example? How should they act?
I think the best way to handle it is, they say, to always find a way to help, like to teach your children to find the helpers in every situation. So when something like that happens, there's either a way to give blood or donate money or help the families, somewhere where they're like a part of the positive in the negative, you know, so they can find the positive by being a helper. You know, you can explain to them how we're going to go buy stuff to donate to a family, or we're going to send money because this happened to those families in need.
But especially when it's so shocking, Allie, you know, and it's like you're watching TV and it's like, you know, your first initial reaction may, you know, you may want to say OMG, or you're, you know,
we're not going anywhere. We're staying home.
So you kind of, as a parent, have to learn how to keep your composure in front of your children.
You have to hide. You have to hide it a little bit. My kids are really young, so thankfully we don't have to talk about it yet. and I can shelter them still.
We're ready for our second part of today's Moms on the Go. And we are talking about a very serious subject today. Obviously, with the Colorado shootings that happened on Friday, how do you talk to your children about it? And what I wanted to touch upon, a little earlier with China, you guys had had a great conversation about how do you talk to your kids, basically being really sensitive of their age. But right now, let's talk about violence on TV. You know, a lot of people are associating right now, perhaps the accused shooter, was he influenced by video games, by movies themselves with the violence? How do you handle what your kids can watch at home?
Well, I think it's kind of funny because we were actually just talking about this, and I had taken my children to see the movie Brave, and my sons too, and I hadn't realized really how graphic some of it was going to be and frightening, and
that's the new Pixar movie.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you know, it's
You
Disney,
think cartoon,
Pixar.
you think, oh, it's going to be lighthearted and fun. But
Right, and there were actually some scary scenes in there, and so I've noticed that, you know, our 2-year-old has recently become afraid of bears.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a parent, you do try to shelter them from that, but I think recently it's become really, you know, difficult even with Disney movies.
Yeah. So, I mean, and how do we even deal with that? I mean, you can't really even change what Hollywood's going to do. You know, I mean, their aim is to make money. Video games, I mean, that's what is attracting people to buy those things. At what age do you kind of let your kids to start playing those video games? How about you, Allie? What would you say?
I'm not sure that they will play those video games.
Yeah.
It scares me so much, but I just need to let them know that video games are video games and we just play them for fun. And real life is real life, and you don't act like that in real life. And I think we need to fix it and just monitor what our kids do.
Absolutely. Now, Lisa, was it hard for you after the Colorado violence? Like, how old are your children?
My oldest is actually only 2.
Okay. So you kind of are in a situation where you didn't really even have to deal
Right.
with that, you
Right.
know? But like for you, how old are your kids?
4 and 2.
Okay. And are they all seeing this? Like, did they noticed it on television at all?
No, thank God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mine didn't either, but I think, you know, even in regards to the movies and like the video games, previewing things before you show them is obviously very important.
Absolutely.
And with the internet now, I mean, really you can go and find trailers and, you know, be very conscious of what you are showing them at a young age. But again, I think talking to them and explaining, you know, that most of this is fantasy and it's not real life, and helping them understand the difference is kind of vital to.
At what age, and kind of just as you guys look to the future, as your children get older, at what age do you start to talk, or do you really explain what death is? Because that has to be an extremely hard thing. I know you had touched upon earlier, a family member had died, and your child had started to play dead. At what age is it appropriate to kind of be like, okay, this is actually what's happening? You know, they've not just gone away for a certain period of time. What would you say, Allie?
I would say when they start asking questions, because you don't want them to think that if you go away to the store that you're not coming back. As if like if a grandmother passes, they're going to wonder. And if you just say, oh, they're not going to come back, they're not really going to understand it. So you just need to answer their question and fill in the blanks that they have in their minds.
So basically, Lisa, I think what you all are saying, it's just important just to talk to your kids. I think so many people try to do that. It's fine, you know, just covering it, and it's going to be fine. So I hate that we're running out of time, but I really quickly want to touch upon your blog, and you all are contributing to the blog. It's momsinheels.net, correct?
Yes, we're debuting kind of a new site coming up, but Molly and last week Carolyn and this week also Allie are all blog contributors. So
that's great.
We just touch on a lot of these
opinions
topics
too. That's great. And there's also going to be a link to our website, WNWO, on your blog as well. We are so glad to have this segment